Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Beno Community Podcast, the space where we talk to people who are shaping the future of work, learning, and community in meaningful ways. Today, I'm really excited because I have another guest. Miranda Lewis with us. She is talking about, in fact, she's co-founder of M2, and later on she's explaining more what they are doing. The point is, recently we talked with each other, and we thought maybe it's a good idea in kind of casual, conversation, sharing some experience, stories, and insights, which is good really helpful for our audience because all the time we are focusing on sharing the stories, the experience, knowledge, and insights. So Miranda has done so much from working in research and advocacy to coaching, training, and now studying for her doctorate in public works. She's also been a leader and board member in several nonprofits. We're going to talk about her journey, the lessons she learned, and also how she supports others to create real lasting change. So let's dive into the discussion today. And I'm so happy to have you here, Miranda. If you want to add something or maybe introduce more in details yourself, feel free to share.
Great. Thanks, Ben. It's really, really great to be here. I've listened to some of your other podcasts, and I think there's something very special about the community you're trying to create here in terms of people who are working together collectively, thinking about how we shift the futures and turn them into the futures that we want. And particularly at the moment where there's a lot of challenges that we're seeing, a lot of, I think, negativity, sadness, anxiety, finding these positive spaces matters enormously. And I think you've asked about my journey, and a kind of common gold of the thread running through my journey is working with people who are trying to make a change. And that's what inspires and excites me and why I started to get into this work.
So, which means working on social and environmental issues was related specifically to change, right?
Exactly. So, I mean, I've done, as you pointed out kindly in the introduction, I've done lots of different things, but the thread really is organizations, people trying to make change. And that might be through programs, that might be campaigning and advocacy, it might be through greater public awareness. And the role that I have at M2 is about working with organizations that might be museums, they might be environmental campaigning organizations, they might be small grassroots charities to think about, understand the work they're doing. And it's interesting, isn't it? Because here we are in this kind of conversation, reflective space. And actually, that echoes a lot of the work that we do, which is helping people to think about the difference they make. It's asking the right questions, giving them time and space to reflect so they can learn about what they've done, the difference they're making, but also what they might need to be doing slightly differently, different emphasis in order to bring around the change they want to see.
So that was a great intro, maybe because in terms of talking about change and making differences, I think when we are thinking about change, we are thinking about future. And the point is, we met each other because after one of the episodes, we had a short discussion related to the episode with Stefan, because also he's working a lot on futures details and he has done a lot so far. And now I want to connect these two ones because thinking, doing, acting, or whatever related to change means you are trying to consider future in your present. And if I want to ask you to share more insights related how you consider or how you implement future in your endeavors, how do you explain it?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I feel incredibly lucky because I'm actually undertaking a program with Stefan at the moment to think more about futures literacy and how that can be integrated and woven into my work. And you're absolutely right that any approach to change it needs to be necessarily thinking about the future. And so much of what we do can be retrospective, reflective, which is important. But to think about the future of change, there has got to be a kind of balance between pragmatism and passion. What am I saying? What do I think might happen? But let's also put aside that assumption. If I could make the change in the world I want to see, what needs to happen? So helping people to kind of navigate those twin poles is a really important part of the work. Thinking about where they see their organization going and how they, the people they're working with, can bring around that change.
And in terms of thinking and doing and planning for change and considering future, and you know better than me that when we are talking about future, we are not talking about just one scenario, one future. There are lots of at the same time different futures, and at the same time, there's nothing. That's kind of concept in our mind. My question is, you are mostly focusing on how can I explain it? Maybe I can mention you are focusing more on non-profits and social enterprises. And when we are thinking or working this field, we need to manage different stakeholders. And you know, that kind of stakeholder engagement, stakeholder management is really, really difficult and overwhelming because, you know, the conception, the concept and the understanding towards future for each of them should be different. My question is, when you are trying to help them to do in a different way, or maybe go with the challenges by considering those futures we already talked. What's your trick for communicate with them and bring them in kind of group setting for bringing kind of collective approach for solving those challenges and problems?
No, it's so important because, yeah, as you've just said, change is collective. All the organizations we work with have multiple complex overlapping relationships. And sometimes those are of competition, sometimes they're of collaboration. And so part of the trick is to help them to understand those relationships and institutional power that might be held, the personal power that might be held, and kind of almost naming and acknowledging that. And then when you start to bring people into the room, you can start to find the common ground. You know, what matters to you in this? So it's coming back to questions. It's asking the open questions. You know, what matters? Where do you see this going? What future would you like to see? What future would you like to see? Let's talk. So a lot of it's about creating space, really. And it's creating space through questions, reflection, and conversation.
But still, as I understand, of course, asking better questions should be really important and critical. At the same time, just asking better questions is not enough. What I mean, you need to build kind of, you know, foundation, kind of comfort zone, safe zone for them because, you know, they need to experience kind of sense of belonging and then start sharing without any concerns. Okay, maybe I'm saying something, but you know, something like that. So, which means at the same time, you need to help them to experience kind of safe zone. At the same time, you need to push them to experience kind of inclusive, resilient, approach towards the challenges and how you handle these two ones.
Yeah, no, it's so important. I mean, any form of facilitation, having that kind of psychological safety in order to then push beyond the concepts that you might have thought of already is critical. And there's some, I think, some common, I don't want to use the word tricks exactly, but kind of approaches and mechanisms. So it's partly starting from a place that feels safe. So, you know, it's asking people the simple questions around, how did you get here today? What's the temperature check? So giving people that kind of sense of bringing something of themselves into the room. And then you can start to ask the slightly more difficult questions. What do you find challenging here? What do you find challenging there? Naming it when someone says something that seems quite difficult. So you're kind of acknowledging that they've said something hard that they brought into the room. So then other people feel safe in doing it. And it's obvious things like tapping into some of different ways that we think. We quite often use music when people come into the room. So perhaps into a different bit of the brain, using creative techniques like collage. So people again are kind of moving out of the intellectual thinking part of the brain, using the more instinctive creative part of the brain. We've got these lovely postcards. And I say we, because I'm talking about myself, my M2 partner, Matthew, that we get people and just spend some time looking at the images. What speaks to you today? Talk to the person next to you. So helping people think differently in order that they can bring that sense of themselves into the space, slightly losing those professional veneers that we all bring to, you know, many interactions.
Yeah, what I see now, for me, it seems like also you are focusing not just on verbal communication, but also engaging them in different ways. For example, as you mentioned, by making collage or some acts or the things like that, you are trying to bring some more opportunities for connections and maybe sharing the ideas and things like that. Am I right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I really found, and that's something we're doing more and more, is people often think, and particularly perhaps, I don't know, British people without stereotyping can feel quite shy sometimes about using more creative approaches. So,
Hear something like that.
oh, I haven't done art since I was at school, oh, I couldn't possibly. But then when you actually give people permission and encouragement, people tend to really like it. And it's having a range of tools in your toolkit. If there's someone, for whatever reason, that doesn't work, we'll say, fine, write a song, think of something. How do you like to communicate? And think of it like that rather than dictating one form. But it's all about, as you say, the sort of non-verbal communication and adapting if it's online or in person as well.
You mean you're not considering yourself as kind of teacher trainer? It seems for me you consider yourself as kind of coach or facilitator in terms of, helping others just to maybe bring that kind of collective approach on the table and try to share, right?
Yes, absolutely. I very much see my role as a facilitator as holding a space, shaping a space where people can bring their own wisdom to it rather than imparting the wisdom myself, because I don't have that. It's for people to bring what they need to bring, and the kind of skill is in developing the process.
So, can you share a story where that coaching or facilitation really helped a group move forward? I just want to ask you to share kind of a story. Could be success story, even maybe it could be, failure story. It's fine. Still, whatever.
Yeah, so I was very fortunate a couple of years ago to be involved in working with an environmental group. I'm going to keep it slightly quiet in terms of the names because it was quite confidential, but the group brought together climate litigators from all around the world and people from many, I think we had people from about 50 different countries in one space to think about strategizing. And you can imagine different languages, different cultural expectations. Some people had traveled a really long way and were really tired. And one thing that we did that worked really well, way better than we kind of thought might, is that beforehand we set up a Spotify playlist and asked everyone to input tunes. I think we had tunes, music from pretty much every single country. And just that, playing that as people walked in, the kind of sense of joy and relief and safety, because people recognized what they were learning made such a difference. That was just kind of one small thing, but it was an incredibly intensive 2.5 days. But what it turned into was people having the space and time to strategize. And we conceptualized it as almost being people around a campfire. You're bringing people in, you're nourishing them with the warmth and the reflection, because these are people doing hard, hard work. And they're both being nourished by meeting each other, but they're also reflecting and learning, taking things away. And that was it was a genuine honor to be part of that. And again, inspiring because, well, there are people doing amazing things out there.
Yeah, inspiring could be really critical, and maybe also it's a good idea to ask something related to inspiring concepts because again, in terms of speaking about change, it's not just about okay, we need some kind of a skills, even the softer skills or the things like that. We need to be inspired, and also, we need to have a minimum passion for that kind of trying to navigate in kind of VUCA world. The unpredictable, volatile, uncertain world, which is also ambiguous. The world is changing very fast. And every day, every moment, maybe we are facing it, some new things. In terms of that inspiration and passion and skills and that insight towards the future, how do you think organizations can keep up and stay grounded? Because, mostly we are trying to use our previous experiences to go with the challenges and predicting the future. And then, plan for something that we want to be as much as possible predictable and familiar for us. But the point is nothing is clear, you know? So how you help them to think in a different way?
Yeah, no, I've been facilitating since COVID, a groups of leaders called Leading in Uncertainty. These all people working in nonprofits. And I think one of the first realizations is that this is the new normal, to use a cliche, but change is constant. And people who used to be able to rely on certain funding cycles, certain political cycles, that has gone. And so there's been a period, I say, of adjustment and grieving, and actually letting people have that period seemed really important, to talk to one another, to acknowledge how the world has changed. And now I think we can start to look outside of it. And as you say, the kind of tools we've used previously aren't necessarily the tools we can use now. What we might have done 10 years ago is not what we're doing now. So it's, again, it's acknowledging that, it's allowing people time to talk to one another, to take lessons from one another, but also to think imaginatively and creatively. And I think it comes back to the creation point, is actually you have got the skills and the imagination, but you've just got to use them in a slightly different way. So how can we unpick the assumptions that we have previously held about uncertainty? So asking people, well, how do you think that's going to happen? What do you know is going to happen? And if you didn't know that, how would you start thinking? If you couldn't predict this time next year, what would you be doing? So again, it's tapping into a slightly different type of wisdom, but you have to, first of all, I think there's a kind of grieving process, a reconciliation process, and then you can start afresh and look upwards. But part of it's time. People don't have time. The change is so constant that it's very easy to be caught in a reactive cycle. To set aside that time to think and strategize, even imagine the future, seems like a luxury for many people.
In your journey, as I remember, after a while, you decided again to go back and do a doctorate. Frankly speaking, usually after a while, people who have lots of experience in the market, usually they are trying to learn in a different way, maybe in terms of kind of micro learning approach, or I don't know, short term programs or the things like that. What was the reason you decided to do something different?
My poor dad, he dropped me off when I had to go and pick my student course. This is the fourth university I've taken you to now. I'm a bit of an eternal student. So I like that sense of structure and academic structure. But I had been thinking for a long time that I wanted to give myself sort of, I don't know, the chance, the space to reflect on this body of work. And everyone on the program, it's called a professional doctorate, and everyone on the program brings their own body of work. And essentially, it's a chance within 2 years to reflect on what you've done, put it into a wider academic context. And I think it was really that, because I think there were threads and stories here that I have never had the chance to tell myself or to think about or tell other people, because I'm always on to the next project, always on to the next thing. What would happen if I stopped and started to unpick the threads that have brought me to this place? So on one level, it feels like a huge luxury, but on another, actually feels like a real necessity to just be able to say, what does this all mean? And where am I going? And where am I going next?
And the point is, I think it means at the same time, you need to handle different things, different roles, because you are busy with your stuff. Also, you have some personal stuff, the study and stuff. I mean, all of them at the same time. I'm curious to know, usually when you think how to organize the things and maybe prioritize how to, I mean, approach to each of them, what's the way of thinking for, that kind of organization? I mean, you are managing your time or doing
Yeah,
something
well,
different?
I mean, I'm very lucky that, I run a business. So to some extent, I can make choices about where I spend my time. And they're also very interlinked. So for example, I've been doing a project with UNDP looking at collaboration around food insecurity. And that feeds into thinking I'm doing in the PhD around collaboration and what that means. And so it's not like I'm doing a PhD, I don't know, in molecular biology that's completely separate. So it's all intertwined, but it's more about dedicating space. And there's an analogy I heard, which I really like, which is that we're all juggling a number of balls, and some are plastic and some are glass. And which is which shifts, and it's knowing which ones you can drop. And there might be sometimes the glass one is one of your kids is having a really tough time and you cannot drop that one. But another time it might be they want you to do something and you don't have time. That one's plastic, it can go. So you have to kind of almost daily, I think, strategize about where your energy can go and where the priorities are.
It seems for me kind of harmony and dancing with the situations depends on the situation. I mean, you are deciding how to react. Am I right? I mean, it seems for me you are not exactly focusing on specifically, for example, time slots and handling the things. You are trying just to focus on how to cope with different stuff in the best way. Depends on lots of things. Am I right?
Yes. It's like being in at a party and you're not the DJ. You don't know which bit of music's going to come on. So, there's a kind of reactive element to it that I do my best.
For long term, I've been busy with kind of helping empowering young generation. Even here in the Netherlands, also, for example, now I'm busy with kind of providing programs for international students to navigate their career path by applying a future literacy mindset. That's why I'm really interested in asking the kind of last question related to this area, which means for those people who are still young enough to have maybe more time to, navigate in a different way, maybe using your insights in a way in their current endeavors. My question is, imagine you want to share kind of piece of advice, but it's just one advice. This is exactly what you think. This is kind of last word you want to share with them. And it's coming from deeply from your personal experience. It doesn't mean it works for them, but it means, okay, for example, you want to share kind of one statement based on, for example, 25, 30 years of experiences. What it would be.
I think it would be notice when you feel silenced. So, and what I mean by that is when have you felt you've seen an injustice, you've seen something that burns within you, and for some reason you weren't able to speak out? And that might be the power dynamics in the place you're at, it might be something constraining you. And take those moments as a guide sign for what is important to you, because it's those moments that stay within you that are telling you, that are guiding you to what really matters.
I wanted to ask something related to what you do at M2 as well. But I expected during our conversation you mentioned more about M2 and maybe share some experiences because I know over there you already worked with lots of organizations providing different programs and things like that. But because of any reason, maybe you decided not to mention a lot about what you are busy with at M2. That's why also I want at the end to ask you to share a little bit more with us. What's the main focus area for you guys at M2, as well as, for example, what are the main, whatever services or the things like that you are providing? And also, if someone wants to learn more about you, your, stuff, whatever you are busy with and things like that, just share the links, LinkedIn, or the things like that you think could be, helpful.
Sure, thank you. Yes, so M2 is really kind of encapsulates a lot of what we've been talking about. We work with organizations trying to make change. And to make that a bit more concrete, we do a lot of work around learning partnerships. And by that, we mean sitting alongside organizations who are trying to understand the difference they make. So we've done quite a bit of work with funders. We worked with Trust for London last year on their temporary accommodation initiative, and that was helping them think about, the contractor called us a critical friend. So we were asking them the questions about the program that might not be seen to people who are embedded in it when you're doing something day in, day out. So we sat with them, we facilitated, we asked questions. Another example would be working with the Imperial War Museum. We worked with them 4 years on their Holocaust education and Second World War program. And again, that was really understanding how this very complex partnership that they had set up that was being funded by the National Lottery Heritage Fund was operating? What lessons can be learned? What could they take into the future from that? How could they reflect more on their work? And how can they also, understand what's working well? How can they celebrate their successes? So a lot of it, I come back to that phrase about making space. It's helping people who are seeking to achieve something to go, okay, now I see why. Now I've just stepped off the email treadmill for 5 minutes, an hour, and thought about it. Uh, Another work is, lots of facilitation. So I run action learning sets, which are chances for people to come together, to think and reflect about their work. So the common thread is reflection, it's questioning, it's understanding. And as you say, it's kind of using that to think about the future, very maybe short term sometimes, also more expansively and imaginatively sometimes.
But just to make it more clear, because now I see your website, and over there, for example, you mentioned different things, as you mentioned training, facilitation, coaching, and things like that. But the main area you are focusing more is kind of organizations. I mean, you are not providing any kind of B2C solutions, right?
And no, it's all working at organizational level. So we tend to get commissioned by a particular organization to work on a particular project, work on a program-wide piece of work. So for another example, we're just working with an organization called Contact, which is a large organization campaigning and providing services to families with children with disabilities. And we're helping them step back and think about their theory of change. And what we mean by that is, what assumptions are you making about how change happens? So you're doing this set of activities, you're hoping it leads to this. What tells you it will lead to this? What can we be testing about that? And what do you feel you know? So it's sort of, again, it's helping organizations show the workings by explaining why they think what they do and the assumptions that they make within that.
Maybe I missed something to ask that could be really important, or you want to emphasize on something that think at the end you want to stress on it. Feel free to share whatever you think at the end. It could be really important.
Thank you. I think a couple of things is, this, as I said, this PhD has been an incredible opportunity just to think and reflect. I look back, the bits of work that have drawn me are the bits about people, because we navigate our world through relationships, through conversations, through questions. And so at some level in all of the work that I've done over the years, it's about understanding that. How do individual change makers navigate their organization, the people they're working with? What support they need to do that really well? And I think, that goes back. I grew up very much in a sense of quite politicized with a small P household. My mother went to lots of protests. My dad ran as a politician. It was kind of public service was built into it. And I think I've taken that sort of sense of duty almost with me. And I think the other thing that I think a lot about is power and how that operates in a sector that is all about challenging unfair power structures. It's about trying to challenge the government or policies or racism or inequality of many, many different ways. But organizations themselves are not always very good at navigating the internal power and what they mean by that. I feel quite uncomfortable. So you mentioned training, and some of the training we do is helping people think about, how do you take up your own power and feel comfortable with that if you do exist in a hierarchical management structure, for example? What does that look and mean to you when the organization you're in is all about challenging power? So that sort of institutional, personal navigation and flow is something I'm really interested in. And I think we found some quite concrete ways of working with people on that as well.
First of all, thank you. Thank you so much for being here and sharing your, experience and your insights with us. It's been inspiring to hear how you blended strategy and also lifelong learning, because now again you are kind of students to create real change. For those who are listening now this episode, I just wanted to mention that we already published 21 episodes, and this is this 22nd episode of Better Community Podcast. Soon we will publish it, and also people can access to other episodes on different platforms such as Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Castbox, and whatever they are using. Also, it's available for them if they are interested to learn more. Just check the description of this episode because we are sharing the link of your LinkedIn as well as the link of your company as well. They can connect with you as well as maybe learn more about what you are doing at M2. And finally, we are sharing more details, some codes, and kind of summary of this episode. As always, thanks for tuning in and don't forget to stay curious, stay connected, and keep building the future together. And if you are interested to know more, learn more about Benu Community, just search Google Benu Community. It's simple and easy. You can find us. We are almost everywhere. Thank you again, Miranda, and wish you all the best.
Thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much.